Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
It's the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
We have grown more open-minded since the last war, but there are still Denobulans who fear Antarans, even hate them. My youngest son, Metis, was seduced by those people. I did my best to convince him he was mistaken. I told him I wouldn't tolerate the values he was embracing. It created a rift between us. Maybe I didn't do enough to reach him. Last time we spoke was nearly 10 years ago. You wanted to know what my children would think if they were here now. I can tell you what Metis would think. He would be happy to have me grant your request and let you die. But that is not the example I tried to set for my children. Why not live? Set an example for yours.
I thought we'd start by asking an important question. Racism.
Oh, why are we starting with this?
Are you for it or against it?
Okay.
Jesse, what's
What
your
kind
view?
of podcast is this?
What's your view? Racism? Yay or nay on racism?
Nay.
Jesse's a firm nay. Dan?
I'm a yay for nay.
Oh, no.
No, that's a yay for nay.
That's
Is that similar to
confusing.
gay? Is that
That's
similar
confusing.
to gay for pay? Sorry.
Okay, nay for you layman's out there.
Okay.
For you
All right.
lame mans out
Okay.
there.
Okay. All right. We'll get to the whole.
Nay, racism's bad, yo.
We'll tackle the whole racism thing in a little bit. Let's start out by saying welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
All here.
This is a weekly Star Trek podcast where we're just a couple of there's three of us.
There
Just
are
a couple
three.
of what?
We're just three guys hanging out, having a good time, talking about Star Trek, just having lighthearted.
How's it going?
Just having
Sometimes there are guests.
a lighthearted chat about Star Trek. That's what we're doing. That's what you've landed on if this is the first time you're listening to the It's Got Star Trek podcast. And I can imagine that there's a very small, perhaps, but there is a segment of the audience
tinge.
who they're like, you know what? We've been hearing about this It's Got Star Trek podcast for a long time. I know what episode we should check out. We should look through their library, and the first episode
This
we're going to
one.
check out is Star Trek Enterprise's The Breach.
Yeah.
That's the podcast I want to listen to determine whether or not I will like this Star Trek podcast.
They rolled 3 10-sided dice.
This
and they came up with a 3-digit number.
This
You did.
this lighthearted Star Trek podcast. Jesse, I don't know what you're talking about with dice. We use Dan's.
Oh, I know why you asked about racism now. I thought it was just like...
You're just getting that.
No,
just
I
getting
thought the
it.
audience was selecting the podcast.
No, he was asked... I was
Oh,
what?
okay.
Wait,
Okay,
are we
I
talking...
I was answering his. I don't
You
know
were
what you're
confused.
talking
I thought
about.
you were.
with dice.
I thought because okay, we get our podcast topics selected by Dan's podcast topic selection algorithm.
Absolutely.
But Jesse, you were talking about a bunch of 3-sided dice, and you're suggesting that people threw
It sounded a little
dice
madcap at first.
in order to select which episode of the podcast they're going to listen to.
Yeah,
right?
you were saying. I thought the way you were going was you were like
I
for some
got you.
reason you selected this one to be the first episode.
Wow.
Looks like we're on the right track.
Yes,
That's
indeed.
about it. We better-
Indeed, we are, Malcolm. Well,
and
if
then I was like, oh, I'm sorry, you had more to say.
well, all I was going to say is if they had rolled the dice in order to get to this episode, those dice would have had to come up with the numbers 2, 5, and 8. Because this is episode 258
Holy fucking shit.
of the aforementioned It's Got Star Trek podcast.
Yeah.
All right.
So much.
Okay.
That's so much content.
All right, Dan, I've stated my piece.
And then I was like talking about, I was confused by your question on racism. I thought you were just like being goofy.
You thought it was a non sequitur.
Yeah.
When in fact it did indeed follow.
It did
It was
follow.
a litmus test.
It's because from this episode.
Yes.
Yeah, racism's bad.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, you said that previously, but I'm glad that you've
you've
doubled down on
reassured us.
that. Now, you both have put me in quite the uncomfortable position, because if we want to have an entertaining and dynamic discussion, it might be lame if all three of us are on the anti-racism side.
Oh, wait, so we need to have some opposing viewpoints?
You've cast me as the racist. As the person supporting the value of racism, which for a variety of reasons makes me a little uncomfortable.
What do you think?
No
about the
Denobulan would
phrase,
want to be in the same room with you.
those people.
Those Denobulans.
Denobulans.
Okay, let me
The Denobulan doctors.
let me
Directive.
get through this beginning bit. So yes, this is episode 258 of the It's Got Star Trek podcast. Welcome. We hope you will enjoy this episode. If not, I don't know. Give a couple others a try. The Rascals one was really good.
Yeah.
Go if you scroll down a little bit, check
Sorry,
out.
What'd you call that, Jesse? Scoundrels? No, Jesse called it scoundrels.
Yeah, last week he was,
Oh yeah,
he was referring to.
I did. Sometimes there's a problem with my brain.
I wish there was an episode of TNG named Scoundrels, or any Star Trek.
Let's
actually.
make one.
Yeah, we could do a fan made. That could be
Fan-made.
one of Dan's special treats on our Patreon. By the way, mentioning Patreon, natural and organic segue. We have a Patreon, so people should check that out. Patreon.com/It's Got Star Trek. I mention it in part because we would like money, but also
I hope that won't be a problem.
but also in part because we recently posted 2 new Patreon episodes. One last week on our travel nightmares. That's a pretty entertaining entry. All 3 of us described some amusing-ish travel nightmares. And then this week we posted one of
It was a
our
blast.
pre-episode banter segments, which is just us preparing for the show before an episode. It was what we recorded before Rascals. And I think
It's a complex procedure, but I'd say the odds are in his favor. The procedure was successful.
It's a lot like the actual podcast.
yeah, except
in a
it's
lot of
better.
ways.
It's better. It's more funny.
It's without a net.
It's more interesting, yeah. Doesn't always have anything to do with Star Trek. But anyway, you can check that out. Patreon.com/It's Got Star Trek. We keep adding tons of stuff there as often as we can.
hurting
And
my ears.
by the way, send us suggestions for what you'd like to see or hear on our Patreon, whether you
All I'm asking is that you try.
whether you subscribe or not. Give us some ideas. Like we came up with an idea because we've had Jesse's questions. And we've had It's Got Star Trek story time. That's what we did last week.
Story time? What story time?
Well, it's like the vacation.
Why don't I remember this?
No, it's the vacation.
Vacation Star Trek gonna get ya. Vacation Star Trek go away.
Why is it threatening? Why'd you make it such a lighthearted song parody threatening?
I don't know. I couldn't think of what else to say.
It's
So-
gonna get you.
Is that song lighthearted?
I mean, yeah, the original vacation, now you want to.
Yeah, you wanna watch it.
Seems kind of
Well, it wasn't. It's gonna
Looks
fucking
like
get
we're on the
you.
right track.
It's not. It's gonna fucking get you. Okay.
Very diligent.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's Vacation Star Trek gonna get ya. Vacation Star Trek run away.
No, the story time was the travel nightmares. We did come up with an idea that we don't know what the content is yet. We just know that it would be called Dan's Special Treat, but we don't know what that would be. So
Thanks, but no thanks.
we have some ideas. None of them, I think, have quite risen to the level of legal or broadcastable. So
What
if
does that
you can give,
That's unfortunate.
if you want to give us some ideas for what you would like to hear on Dan's Special Treats, send us an email.
Rice
And-
Krispies.
Enough.
And you can do that at feedback@itsgotstartrek.com. That's feedback@itsgotstartrek.com.
Stand by.
So we don't have any
Are there reviews?
emails this week, but we did have a review.
Wait, remember that song? It's like, but you did, but you did, but you did. Who sings that?
ZZ Top.
That's ZZ Top.
They also sang that song in Back to the Future 3 where it's like... Actually, they don't sing it. They're just playing the music. Frisbee, far out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we talked about this free association thing before the episode, and I am guilty of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you predicted I would be.
Well, okay. So for those not in the know, because you weren't listening to the podcast before we were recording it.
But you can if you listen on Patreon.
Dan sometimes gets frustrated with me because I have a tendency to free associate from time to time. I find it amusing and relaxing,
Well, the
and
problem
psychologically comforting.
But sometimes you do it like right in the middle of me talking. You like hijack my sentence and run it off into a movie reference or
Well,
something.
that's a free association.
Yeah, I know, but
So, again,
but
I was
it's
saying, Dan,
different when you do it to yourself. But when you're like grab some shit and run with it.
Before we start recording, Dan is like, listen, you gotta not do this and you gotta not do this.
I do not do that.
And then we start recording and then he starts
Not
doing
quite.
it.
He immediately starts doing it.
Oh, far from it.
Not quite. Not quite.
Oh, far from it.
Well, if
Jesse's talking shit.
if you'd like to learn the who's right, Jesse or Dan, on that,
I have tried to treat you with respect.
Subscribe.
I refuse to listen to these insults.
subscribe to the Patreon, because guess what? You will hear some of that pre-episode banter, and you can make a determination for yourself what is what. But let's keep things moving
Keep
along.
him away from me.
Because we do have a lot to discuss in this
Yeah.
particular episode, The Breach. But first,
Breach.
we did have a new review. And as longtime listeners, or at least people who've listened for the last few weeks, will know,
Recent listener.
we have a policy that was developed by Dan.
It's what we agreed to.
It is. Dan conceived of this policy and volunteered to back it up, which is
It's somewhat recent, though.
for every review, we will provide a haiku.
I enjoy a good challenge.
Yes. And it's a custom haiku for
It's bespoke.
but it's a bespoke haiku for the review in return for the review and about the review and or reviewer.
At you.
And we will not use ChatGPT or Gemini or any of that business.
No, it's mostly focused around
It's for
the
real,
seed.
baby.
The seed of the haiku is their username.
Yeah. And so Dan is the one who's composing these haikus. Now,
It's a complex procedure, but I'd say the odds are in his favor.
when we first introduced this policy, it was quite successful. In the first week, it was very successful. Got reviews, got haiku, and we produced haikus.
We got two. We got
It was
several
great.
haikus.
And then all of a sudden, those
Dried
reviews dried up.
No Denobulan would want to be in the same room with you.
Dry as a bone. And Dan
as a
became
Denobulan
concerned that it was because his haikus were so terrible
The damage was extensive.
that perhaps people were perceiving the promise of a haiku not as a promise but as a threat.
Oh, no.
So last
You
week,
won't survive more than 2 days.
last week we specified
Not necessarily true, but you never know.
that you can still write a review, but if in the review you ask us not to write a haiku, then we won't write the haiku. So it's not
It's
a thing.
painful to admit, but I understand why.
But thankfully,
Lo and behold, we
that's-
got a review.
Yes, that's even better. Lo and behold, lo as in hark.
Lo.
Hearken.
My
Like
name
L-O.
is my name is Behold. First name Lo, middle name N.
Wait, is there a joke there that I'm not getting?
My last name is Behold. First name Lo, middle name N.
Oh, lo. Wait, your last name. Wait, your last name is hold.
Behold.
Oh, your last name.
My
is
last
Behold.
name is
Behold.
Behold. No,
And
you
your-
think I'm saying my
Or
last
B
name?
period hold.
Patrick thinks I'm saying my last name Behold. I'm saying no, my last name is Behold.
And what's your first name
Lo.
and your second name?
My middle initial
Lo N?
is N.
Lo in behold. Okay.
Lo and Behold.
Oh.
You said you pronounced the N. You went Lo and Behold. Lo and Behold.
Well,
It's-
I was saying lo and behold, and you were saying N.
but you didn't even
What
say.
about Lo and
But you didn't say
Behold?
N, Patrick.
does
You-
N stand for Nathan?
No, stop. You didn't even. You didn't even say N. You went a step further and you pronounced the
Yeah,
sound. You went
Yeah.
mm.
Well, because
Lo-
that's what you're trying to. That's the gag, right?
No.
Lo and behold.
What's
and-
Lo and Behold?
Lo and behold.
Lo and Behold, not Lo and Behold. You said Lo and Behold.
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
N stands for nard longer.
Nard longer. Wait, what?
No, there's actually some dude named Nardwar. Have you ever heard of Nardwar?
No, not until just
Maybe. What
He
kind
does
of dude
these.
is it?
He interviews these people, and he like always knows all this information about them. He's like, "What was it like growing up on so and so street when you worked at the so and so deli or whatever?" And they're always like, "Holy shit!" And he's got a song. It's like Nardwar.
right.
Nardwar.
I don't think I know what that is.
You look up Nardwar on YouTube.
I don't. I probably won't.
You
How
should.
is it- how is it
It's entertaining. It's spelled like it sounds.
Oh.
Okay. So we got a review. So
Patrick, you're being recalcitrant by saying
not being recalcitrant.
instead of just being quiet and accepting it, you specifically told me you were like, I'm not gonna do that.
I said I'm
not gonna do that.
I said I'm probably not going to do that.
I'm probably not. I'm gonna let you know, you and everyone else know that I'm not gonna do that.
You and everyone else know.
Hey,
Because he's
hey,
from California.
hey,
Well-
hey, you.
Well, it's a
hey.
good thing we're doing
Go
it.
away.
What is
It's a good thing we're doing
Is that a
an
different- that's a different
enterprise,
accent.
so we're not driving away too many
Hold
too
on,
many
hold
audience
on,
memories.
hold on.
Huh?
Hoagie,
Huh?
hoagie. I want a hoagie.
Is it Baltimore?
I'm hungry. I want a hoagie. Hey, hoagie.
Now, audience, kind audience, I would gently point out that
Enough.
another example of Dan, because Dan's like, we take too long to get to the topic of conversation.
Yeah, right. Before we start recording, he's like, don't do this and don't do this.
I did not.
Shaking his fingers.
I haven't killed
Pointing
anyone.
the fingers.
All right, so we got
buttons.
We got a review from longtime friend, caller, listener,
The one and only.
TV guy Grayson on some social media. A lot of
Somesocialmedia.com.
Well, it's
In
because-
Australia, it's somesocialmedia.au.
So, we're all spread around so much social media these days, and Twitter's lame, and but the other ones don't have a lot of action. But
Twitter,
more
more like bitter.
Yeah. Okay.
Shit.
More
So-
like shitter. Yeah, that's even better.
So thank you, Grayson, for leaving such a wonderful and excellent review. We really appreciate it. 5 stars on iTunes. If you'd like to check it out, you can either look at our social media at It's Got Star Trek on the various social medias, or go to iTunes and check out the reviews. Hey, why don't you do that? Because while you're there, you can write a fucking review.
Yeah.
Then you can get your own haiku.
Don't worry, I'll go first.
I don't mean to be aggressive about it, but come on. It's not that.
Just
big.
It's
do
what
it.
we agreed to.
But yes, thank you so much,
write a fucking
Grayson.
review already.
And now, as promised,
Wait, did you say his name, like his
Grayson.
handle?
Yeah,
His handle.
yeah, TV guy Grayson.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I've said that. So I guess is your
you
bespoke
handle it?
haiku focusing on the TV guy?
No,
part
I
of the Grayson?
did. Well, no, I told you from the start that the seed of the haiku, it's not the entirety of what it's based upon, but the seed of the haiku is the username. So I just wanted to make sure that was fresh in people's minds.
Sorry,
Yes.
it's just because I was thinking about whether or not you can buy seedless haikus.
Seedless?
Seedless haikus.
Looks like we're on the right track.
Sorry, it's just,
Pitted.
I'm sorry,
You just talking about shelled sunflower seeds? You're talking about seedless haikus?
the sunflower seeds was before we started the podcast.
I know. That's what I'm saying, though.
All right.
Little inside baseball.
Seedless.
legend. It's a legend.
No, because I was editing some other thing of ours. I don't even know what it was at this point. Probably a Patreon thing where Jesse, in the middle of, we're talking about something, and Jesse freaks out because he's eating some grapes, and he discovers that one of his bag of seedless grapes has a seed in it.
Oh.
And it caused a whole ruckus. Anyway,
You're the reason we haven't been able to put the past behind us. You have kept this hatred alive.
you're the reason we're not talking about this episode. So let's do the haiku, and then we'll talk about the episode.
What's
How's
your
that?
haiku, Dan?
All right. Here we go. Going to do the haiku for the review and you.
That's not the haiku.
Hey, were you gonna say shut the fuck up? That sounded like what
I
you were
said
gonna
that's not the haiku.
say. But it sounded like you caught yourself, like you were about to say shut the, and then you
well, wouldn't I have rights too?
I mean, rights as in human rights. I mean, I don't want to take that
Human.
from you. All right. Here's the haiku for
Okay.
TV guy Grayson.
All right.
Once was black and white. They added brilliance of light. Sun shines on the gray.
Okay. So,
I like that one.
There was some
That's good.
incidental rhyming there. I didn't mean to make it rhyme, but it did.
I mean, it's a good haiku.
It's pretty punk rock.
You definitely stressed the whole TV part.
So how did I
nothing wrong with
define?
that. I am-
How did I define my
This is
seed? How did I define my seed in your face,
Oh shit!
in your ears? I defined my seed
This
in
is
your
not
ears.
This is not a
That's
critique.
not
This
that
is
kind
a
of podcast.
literary analysis. So very nicely done. Very nicely done.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate that, Dan. We'll publish that on our social media so other people can see it.
Interestingly, I was looking up. Remember our discussion of gram and how I was like, is gram 1 or 2 syllables? And I was arguing because of the way it's spelled.
Graham?
It would be
Like
2.
like the Graham.
Yeah, Graham.
Yeah.
And like the way you say it, it's 1 syllable. But when you look at the way it's spelled, I was like, well, it's spelled like it has 2 syllables. Now I was looking on the internet because I used the word brilliance. And I was like, how many syllables are in brilliance?
Brilliance.
Is it 2 or 3? And I was thinking, well, it's 3, but it sounds like 2. I found some places on the internet said 3, but the majority of what looked to be the most reputable by my like my eye seem to indicate that that 2 is the accepted number of syllables for brilliance, although some people say 3. And I looked up the definition of syllables, and all the definitions related to how you spoke the word as opposed to how it was spelled.
Thus spake Zarathustra.
Damn, dude.
And which is interesting because as a child, I specifically remember, unless I'm creating this memory, I feel like I remember as a kid learning that syllables were defined by how they were spelled, like were the placement of consonants against the vowels and such.
And that's the problem with school.
Well, we've learned a lot.
Is it 2 consonants in a row? Is that
We've learned a lot today on the It's Got Star Trek
freehand?
podcast.
No, see, because freehand, that's 2 syllables, and that's EHA, whereas Graham, that's 1, but that's AHA.
We've learned a lot of, not much about Star Trek, but
A little
we've
bit.
learned a lot in this
The
first
good
20
thing-
minutes.
about
The good thing
Dan,
about this
a little bit about
haiku,
Chesney.
the good thing about this haiku though is it's one of the features
Haiku,
of
though?
one of this features of this haiku is that if we decide that brilliance is 3 syllables, I can take out the first letter of the second line. The second line they added
Brilliance.
Yeah, the second line they added brilliance of light. If we decide if someone who wants to convert brilliance to a 3-syllable word, we can just say added brilliance of light. So that's a feature of this haiku that you're getting as part of your money's worth.
Do you think it's a feature of selecting Star Trek Enterprise episodes that we dilly-dally a lot in the beginning because we're afraid we're not going to be able to talk about it for the full time?
Oh,
I think a little bit. Yeah. I have that problem.
All right, well, how about this? Let's start talking about it, and if we have to add some filler at the end, we can come up with some good filler at the end. Okay.
Where would I stay?
I thought I made myself clear.
I love his sentence. It's so buttery and syrupy.
I thought I made myself clear.
I was trying to... Did you figure out who the actor was?
Who played Kubiak and Parker Lewis Can't Lose?
No. Who is... What that quote right there, from the
from
magistrate or whoever?
He was the governor.
The governor.
The governor.
Of a whole planet?
You never know in these kinds of shows.
Yeah. I wasn't...
Whichever faction they just take
the credits
taking
weren't
control.
super clear for this episode. But anyway, I like that guy too.
I don't know. I never thought to even look up who that was.
I thought I made myself clear. Captain Archer, I thought I made myself clear.
Clear. I thought I'd made myself clear.
Captain Archer, I thought I made myself clear.
Oh, this sounds cool.
I thought I made myself clear. Captain Archer, I thought I made myself clear. I thought I made myself clear. Captain Archer, I thought I made myself clear.
That sounds cool.
That's groovy, man.
I mean, it's all right.
Because the original one is this. The original one is this.
Captain Archer, I thought I made myself clear.
It begins with Captain Archer, but when I do this, it sounds like it ends with it.
I thought I made myself clear. Captain Archer, I thought I made myself clear.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds
Change
like
'em ups.
you sort of like roughly
I
edited.
rushed
first part
it. I
of the-
rushed it.
I thought I made myself clear. Captain Archer, I thought I made myself clear.
No,
Better.
No, I feel you.
I won't suffer you another
Damn.
repetition.
No, I'm coming around.
Yeah! Yeah!
It's one of those nights. How about this? Let's talk about.
I'm trying to figure out who that guy was, but
You figure that out while Jesse and I discuss Phlox's Tribble. This is the earliest canonical reference to a
It's called a triple.
So obviously not the first mention in the series. That was in Star Trek, the original series. But
Just roll by.
in terms of the timeline, I believe it's still true that this is the first time in on-screen timeline that we see a Tribble.
You don't see what eats it though. dude.
No, but
All it's capable of doing, really, is eating and breeding.
He's got all those other monsters.
yeah, I know, right?
You know, it's something, some kind
Problem
of
is, they breed quite prodigiously.
I mean, in fact,
Religiously.
the episode kind of it begins kind of jarring, right? These cute tribbles, and then they're being fed to these alien reptile monsters.
Yeah. Well, we're assuming they're reptiles because he talks about all the how
Right.
they have all the
It's
lizards
all-
on
But
the
they do
Tribble
the
planet.
awesome thing where you can't see what's in the cage, and they drop something in.
Jurassic Park style.
Yeah, and it's like, and then like as if it didn't make you feel bad enough, like these cute tribbles getting torn apart. Then we see it in Hoshi. She's like, oh
Yeah,
man,
she's all grossed out by it.
yeah. So I was thinking about how this was an Easter egg, and I wonder if this annoyed people back when it happened, because sometimes people get annoyed when shows shoehorn in Easter eggs or references. I don't feel. I mean, it
But
was a little.
do they get that way when it's about tribbles?
Well, I think it doesn't matter what it's about. I think it's the idea of like in Star Wars, for some reason, Anakin like invented C-3PO or
Star Wars,
whatever.
what's that?
Point, but this is not the same as that. But it's like it was a little shoehorned in the tribble thing. I didn't mind it. I thought it was cool. But I'm wondering if back then
Yeah.
people were
No,
annoyed,
it
being
was-
like, "Why
it
were there
was-
tribbles in this?"
It
you
was
know?
plenty of tribble. It was just a little bit there.
But it was just kind of like put in there for no
little
reason.
Easter.
Would you call it a reference or an Easter egg?
The line has been blurred at this point.
Yeah, I don't think it's an Easter egg because Easter
because
egg
it's
is
pretty.
more hidden.
Yeah, you're right. It's more. Yeah, it's like a statue in the background.
It's just pulling in
Yes,
some lore.
okay.
yeah.
You're right. Lore.
I don't know. I don't know if people, because I don't disagree with you that people get aggravated about this type of stuff sometimes, but I do think it sort of
The
depends.
Star Trek haters.
I think it depends on what it is, and I kind of agree with Jesse that Tribble might be in that category of like, oh, cool, a Tribble or Targ. You know, they just mentioned
right.
something. You know,
Toby
it's like it's just
Targ.
part of the world building.
Mhm.
But I like this opener teaser, except for how it ended, because I'm not a fan of the teaser that ends with a character reading something that we can't read, and then they look all concerned
Oh, right.
because it doesn't tell us anything.
It's just it's like pulling us along, like being like,
It's
hey,
just-
we know something you don't.
Phlox is concerned. It's just not that interesting, right? I mean, I've seen this episode a bunch, so I knew what was coming, but I don't know. It's just, I watched that and I was like, come on. Come on. I mean, I'm not going to suggest any better ideas because
Of course, you could always order me to tell you.
I'm not capable of that. I'm not a professional
Pro
television-
wrestler?
No, I'm not that either. Nor would I have the talent to be. But yeah,
we
it
should
was just,
pretend that you are.
it was a little like, okay, all right. And it was it was a pretty short teaser too. Not that there's a problem. Sometimes a short teaser is like the way to go.
Enterprise, I've been noticing the episode length seems to be the shortest of any of the Star
Yeah,
Treks.
no, it was.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
because they each series
Yeah.
started
Squarking out. I don't know.
squeezing in more commercials.
I don't know if Voyager. I feel like Voyager was at least as long as TNG.
Because you
though.
had to
No,
go
no.
shopping. That was back during the war.
Yeah, I
You were
think
supposed
both.
to go out
I think
and
Deep
shop
Space
shit.
Nine, Voyager. I think Voyager even got shorter over its run because I think it was.
I don't know about all
particularly
that.
the end. Well, I don't know either, but I believe so. I'm going to believe it and assert it
Want to bet?
as a sincerely held belief. Now we're in the streaming era where the episodes can range
There are
from
no commercials.
like well over an hour to. Remember that one episode of Picard in the second season that was like fucking
Yeah.
31 minutes
Yeah.
long, and the episode didn't make any sense, and
Right.
it felt like they just cut out half of it because they were just like, "This is shit."
a lot of
Oh,
streaming
man.
shows do that. There's one that's like 30 minutes, and there's one that's like 90 minutes.
Yeah. In principle, I don't mind that. In practice, it can be a little aggravating just when you're kind of expecting a certain amount of entertainment in a given week.
Yeah, if it ranges from like
Right.
45
I got
minutes,
other stuff to do,
If it
man.
ranges to 45 minutes to like an hour plus, I'm okay with it. But yeah, if you get down below
Yeah.
40 minutes, one episode and the next is about that. I think 40 minutes is kind of like where my cutoff. Like I don't want to mix those two sides.
And honestly, if,
Speaking of prejudice, I don't want to mix my greater than or equal than sides of 40. Is that prejudice of me? That I don't want to mix my greater thans with my less thans?
some sort of mathematical
It sounds
racism.
Yeah.
a little bit threatening.
I don't know. I think it can go the same way with the stuff that's too long as well. If you don't have a heads up that you're about to put on an episode and it's like fucking an hour and 45 minutes.
Heads up, it's too long. Heads up, it's too long.
Anyway,
Get it?
well, this episode is exactly the right length. It's exactly the right length for all, like it shares the same length as all Enterprise episodes. So we get the teaser,
perfect
and
length.
then we.
I call it a cold open, but Patrick calls it a teaser.
Okay,
I was going to say cold open.
We called it a cold open.
I'm hungry, I
in
want-
most
Sure, you don't
podcasts.
mind if it's a cold open.
I'm hungry. I want to eat a hoagie.
All right,
Is
so
that like Philadelphia?
I want
or
to put some onions on my hoagies.
the episode starts. We're almost at the
wrong with
beginning
you?
we're almost at our first break, and almost at the beginning of this episode, where we
I certainly tried.
figure out the plot, which is there is a planet called Xantorus,
And they
and
have
the Xantorans appear to be xenophobic.
They're not Xantorans. They're Antarans.
No.
No.
The
That's a
planet,
different.
they're Xantorans.
He is the first Antaran I've ever met.
The Antaran was a guest on the planet along with everyone else, and so
He was aghast of what?
I'm not going to respond.
No Denobulan would want to be in the same room with you.
So they go to this planet Xantorus,
To meet.
That was the
Which-
reason why they hated it.
which they do a good job of explaining both through exposition and showing and not telling and all that other good stuff of laying the groundwork for this was a previously open society where tons of people from other planets are visiting for a variety of reasons, including the Denobulans for their science and the Antaran guy that we meet.
And those other weird
Hudak.
guys, weird faces.
Yeah, there are all sorts of weird-faced people, and they previously were perfectly well accepted. There's some sort of coup happens on the planet, and a xenophobic sect takes over the government, and starts a civil war or whatever.
But
It
it
tells
is-
everyone they
Sounds
gotta
familiar.
leave.
It's but it kind of implied that this had been going on for a while because those Denobulan miners were all like, "Oh, just give it some time. Like they'll switch over. They'll change. Government will change hands."
Yeah, but
In
not the
three
specific
and they
Those
all-
guys were just gonna hang out in the caves and like look at rocks.
Well,
all
didn't they
the
say they
fucking
only
time.
had like 3 weeks left of stuff to do or some shit
Yes,
like that? And so
yeah.
they were
gonna stay
that's a pretty
down
big
there.
bet that in 3 weeks the government's going to switch hands. So which would imply that the
yeah.
government's been switching hands a lot.
I mean, it would if you believed the Denobulans, and I think
Yeah,
they were
but what-
I think we were supposed to take them as being careless.
They've just been fucking stupid. Like
Yeah,
necessarily.
I think we were
They're just
we were
like-
supposed to, and not because they're Denobulans, but because they're scientists. Because they're
just
scientists
seems-
obsessed with their work, so they will rationalize.
Yeah,
They will
had
rationalize.
They had all those samples stashed along
Yeah.
the way, and they were trying to like grab them as they went out.
I
And
think
it
they
was
were-
like no more rock samples. Dude.
These were being depicted as the typical scientist rationalizing anything to allow them to continue their work.
apolitical,
Yes, exactly. "Quote unquote" apolitical.
quote unquote.
Yeah, because
The-
Werner von
the-
Braun
the-
comes to mind.
Yeah,
If you know what I'm saying.
yeah.
Look it up, folks. Werner von Braun.
He's buried in Alexandria.
Yes, he is. But you know what is not buried in Alexandria?
It's got Star Trek.
No, a break. The concept of taking a break. So
You can't stay here forever.
Yeah, well, we know we can't. We can't stay in this
We
break
can't.
forever. So we're gonna stop talking for a little bit, and then we'll come back and continue to talk about this episode, and mostly this episode, The Breach, from Star Trek Enterprise's second season. Be right back.
Stand by.
Okay, I think we're ready. So,
Yeah, I'm ready. Podcast.
okay, we're back.
Better late than never.
we will continue podcasting
Point your finger at me.
for the time being.
My fingers are intact.
All right.
Pointing your finger at me.
So the Xantorans are xenophobic.
The Antarans.
Xantorans.
No, they're-
no, not the Antarans.
Are you saying they're different?
No, yes, there's two. They were talking about. We're at the planet. The Xantarans is the planet.
The planet
And
is
there was
the planet is Xantorus.
Xantorus, yes, and on Xantorus
Stop
there are
causing trouble.
Xantorans, and there are also Antarans. But the Antaran was visiting Xantorus.
There
You see?
are no Xantorans.
Yes, there are Xantorans.
No, they're not. There's Xantorus, the planet.
Yes.
But there's no Xantorans.
Yes, there are.
They don't say that anywhere.
Yeah, but we can presume it because of the basic linguistic patterns.
But they
in Star
never
Trek.
say Xantoran.
Well,
in the
I'm going to
episode.
stake my reputation.
Well, I'm going to stake my reputation that they don't say it.
Doesn't
Well,
matter.
you're right, they don't say it, but we can still use it as a term because I'm trying to differentiate between the people known as the Antarans and the people known as the Xantorans.
Fine.
Because otherwise, what would you think it would be? Xantorians? Could be.
It could be.
There's just one of those guys,
Xantorites.
right?
It'd be-
Xantorites?
Xantorites.
I kind of like that, but it makes me a little uncomfortable.
That dude was on that ship, and they didn't even get down to the surface. They
Get
got,
down.
like,
Yeah, I know.
they
Get
were-
down, get down. No,
they
no,
were-
no, no, no.
I was thinking, get down on it.
They were having trouble. Like the surface folks were giving them shit. So then
Yeah.
We never
the
meet the-
Enterprise had to intervene.
Yeah, we never meet the surface folks.
We'll hear them on the.
We
the
never
audio.
find out-
You played the audio of the sexy guy.
We download the audio on MP3 and tell the whole world how Eminem got VD.
Yeah.
Well, free associate. I did it again.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
It wasn't our proudest moment, but we've done our best to put it behind us.
Don't worry, though. We already explained to the audience that they should check
Um,
out one of the other episodes too.
um,
If you don't like this episode, just check out the
Go
Rascals.
fuck
one.
yourself.
Check out the Rascals one. You'll like the Rascals one.
He's my number one dog.
Or the
you'll like
first
that.
episode.
Don't worry about the first episode.
We this podcast?
Yeah, I think probably start around like episode 169 maybe.
Start on Shadowplay.
Yeah, start on Shadowplay. That's a good place to start.
Yeah. The ship for some reason gets blowed up inside. We don't really know why that happens.
Well, yeah,
Some
happened.
shit goes down.
Yeah, something happened, man.
Yeah. And were you talking about something specifically? Did I interrupt you?
No,
Okay.
I don't
Well,
think so.
Okay.
If
Well,
you did, I don't recall.
Archer was
All
talking.
is forgiven.
Thank you. Phlox was talking about how they were been in conflict. Affleck. Oh, I know what you're talking about. We're talking about Xantarans, and I was arguing that they never say.
No, we stopped talking about that. That was a conversation that was
Okay.
Oh my
A,
goodness.
unnecessary, and B, concluded.
Right, so they're talking about how the Antarans, not the Xantarans, but the Antarans were at war with the Denobulans, and then Archer's like, and they tells him how long it's been. It's been like, he's like 300 years, and Archer's like 300 years, fuck, you know. And considering
Archer's like, fuck, man.
Which seems like a long time, but consider the lifespan
For humans, it is.
for the lifespan of the average Denobulan, which we don't have an official number, but I checked 3 sources.
There's some implications even in this episode.
He's talking about his grandma. Or something.
Grandma was alive during those wars.
Well, and right, so according to Mass Trek Wiki, they live from 170 to 280 years.
Okay, there you go.
According to 118 Wiki, they live for 350 years, and they live 400 years, according to some guy on Trek BBS.
Just a single person.
Just a guy or a person. Right.
When was this published on Trek BBS?
Oh gosh, I didn't even think to look at that. That's unusual for me. I usually always check my source dates.
Denobulan BBS.
How long do Denobulans live?
Denobulan.
Dorknoblians.
Dornobulans.
Goes to Showbulan.
This was 2019. Somebody said this.
On Trek BBS. So it's recent. I don't know. I probably unfairly, I sometimes discount any Trek BBS, anything posted past like 2002.
Well, it was made by M. Spence, according to M. Spence.
Wow. No offense,
But
M. Spence.
But he was.
Who do you think you are?
I mean, in the message board.
Are you sure it's not Mike? Was it Mike Pence? Is it
Oh,
Mike S. Pence?
Because that guy's full of shit.
In the message.
I think you're reading Mike Pence's.
In the message
Trek
board. No,
BBS
this is
stuff.
important. This is relevant information.
All
And under his name, it shows that he's an ensign and a newbie. So.
Well,
an ensign.
I think Mike
I'm
Pence.
Commander Jesse.
So we can throw out 400 years. I'm gonna go with 280 to 300 years.
Okay.
So in that case, yeah, grandparent was in it. That's like 100 years. 100 years
like a
for a
dwarf.
human. So really, like war, hatred that's gone on for 100 years, still pretty long time, but it's not like 300 years like they
300
made it
years.
seem.
Like, think about like a war that was fought 300 years ago. You don't give a shit. Like,
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about like if it's closer to 100 years, which is
that's
comparatively
more like
in
it.
human
That's
years,
more like it
in Denobulan years and
yes.
human years.
Yes.
So I'm just saying, like, it's not as much as they made it out to seem.
Yeah.
And they
It's
was
like
talking-
Fahrenheit and Celsius.
And then they said 6.
Human years and
But
Denobulan
interesting, they said it's been 6 generations since an Antaran has seen a Denobulan, which is like 1200 to 800. That's 1200 to 1800.
Well, a generation
years.
isn't the full lifespan. So we wouldn't call a generation 80 years for humans. We'd say a generation is what, like 20 years?
80 years.
20 or 30 years is a generation.
Would you consider that?
Maybe like,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, like Generation
30.
X, Generation Y,
I would say it's closer to
millennials,
30
zennials.
years.
Well, whatever. It's still not a full lifespan.
Right.
So if you're applying that to the
I guess you're right,
Denobulan
because then
lifespan,
that'd be like 180 years.
yeah, it'd be like 50 years, 50 times 6.
So
is
they
like-
had the war, and then halfway between the war and now, Denobulans and Antarans just stopped associating with each. So they associated with each other a little bit after the war, but then they stopped.
No, I think it could still be 300. If you say for Denobulians, it's like 50 years
Well,
is
if
a
you
generation.
well, you just said 20 years was a generation.
No, for humans. I said for humans, 20 to 30 years. And so I said if you then adjust that
I know,
to
and
the
I did adjust
Denobulan
it. I did
to
adjust
50
it.
years.
I did adjust it.
50 times 6 is 300.
Yes. 60
6
times.
generations, 50 times 6 is 300. It works out, right? He said 300, 6 generations, 50 years is a generation.
I mean, if you want to play it like that.
Oh, you're normally Mr. Math guy, and I finally got to use math to make a reasonable assumption about
Danny
something.
numbers.
He's trying to take it away from me.
I take nothing.
I get to use math from time to time.
He mathed you,
I know I'm
dude.
like a qualitative person, but still, come on. I know some basic math.
No Denobulan would want to be in the same room with you.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't want to be in the same room with is this period's directing style of Robert Duncan McNeil. I love Robert Duncan McNeil, both as the actor who played Tom Paris, and I think he's really a great director.
Did he direct this?
He directed this
Another guy.
episode. He's an excellent director. He's, in my book, right up there with Jonathan Frakes in terms of actors turned directors and the quality of work that they put out is really good. And he's been, in particular, he directs a lot of episodes of Resident Alien. He's like one of the main producers on Resident Alien and directs a huge number of the episodes. So he's really great. However, I was not a fan of, particularly in the beginning of this episode, there's a ton of wobbly ass handheld camera work. And I'm thinking that maybe back in 2003, in April of 2003, which I think was prior to the Iraq War.
It's good. They were
But
drumming the drums.
you're watching this on a smaller TV in a college dorm room. Maybe that's not coming across as aggravating. On a big giant LED
One of those,
TV,
like, flat screen.
I was like
TVs.
getting sick. I was like, man, this
You
is
get
a
that-
shaky ass camera.
You get that TV vertigo?
I don't usually. That's the thing is like I really don't
Vertigo.
usually. But there was something about how floppily, and it wasn't the
They
whole
do that-
episode, and it was specifically the scenes in the ship when I think Robert Duncan McNeil was trying to convey some sort of tension or unease and it was all like as Phlox was explaining the situation. With the ship being damaged and having to go to the planet, and then like dealing with the guy, it calmed down once it got into like Phlox and the guy talking it out. And on the cave part, it was absent. And the cave part, it was rock solid camera work.
They used
rock solid. Was that a pun?
It was not intended to be, but thank you for
Rock
observing.
Rock samples.
My speleothems.
Hey, you've sampled him saying rock samples.
Hey.
Can you make that into music somehow and then get to
Rock samples.
Because you're about
Rock
to make
samples.
a point.
Rock samples. Rock samples. Rock samples.
All right, so the answer to my previous question is no.
No, what was the question?
If you could make music out of that sample.
I just gotta try a little harder. I didn't
dude.
cut off enough from the beginning.
Cut it.
Cut it.
You try to make a point.
they use that shaky
it
cam a
out.
lot nowadays, so much that I think it's just a plug-in on whatever video editing software they use that they just press shaky camera and it starts
I think there's
shaking.
some of that. These days there's some of that, but I think it's also
They do it a lot these days.
Yeah,
That was
but
back in the day.
but it's
I
done-
saw it in
it's
that
done-
Star
it's-
Wars show.
Yeah, no, but and Discovery did it from time to time, but it was done differently. Like there's a
Which
there's
Star
a
Wars
different
show?
vibe. I don't know if it's because of the
It might have been the Obi-Wan show.
the digital filters, or if it was because of the camera holders. You know, the units they use to hold when they hold.
Do you
Steady
think
camera.
do you think they got analog bouncers that
I'm
were
just
they
saying-
bouncy on their own? Or do you think they got a guy to jump up and down?
There's a little guy. They had a little guy. One of
Or-
the little guys.
Whatever it was in 2003, it was not coming across nicely on my TV.
2003 on my TV.
I just found it very distracting when
Yeah.
I was trying to, hear the exposition so I could understand what was going on in the plot.
The pot. So speaking of cave stuff, finally we get a Travis episode. Except we don't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
right.
I love the fact because I have it in my notes. I actually made the same basic comment twice in my notes.
21 minutes he exits the fucking
Yeah.
episode with barely any lines.
It's the writers realized halfway through, they're like, oh shit, Travis is coming dangerously close to being relevant to this episode.
no.
So what we got to do is we got to
doesn't get to have any
we got to
episodes.
horrifically injure him and take him out of the picture.
Just give me something for the pain.
Now, Dan,
Like
Pitons, ration packs, flex cable. Pitons, ration packs, flex cable. Waste disposal units.
Yeah, what about that shit?
I like when I like
That's a duty or no duty.
Yeah, it is. Side note, I like the face Trip Tucker III made when they were talking about waste. It looked like some like,
he's like, where would I poo?
where would I poo?
Where would I stay?
You don't get it.
I don't get it.
You don't get it.
I don't get it.
Where would I stay?
The face he made when he realized what that was, it was like if somebody told a dirty joke to a really prude person.
Yeah.
Like they just made this like, whoa.
And I don't buy it because he's from Florida. They know,
Yeah.
they know
I know,
all about poo
right?
down
They
in
all-
Florida.
I'm not joking, Lee.
It's a dirty place.
But Dan, I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
if
we were
you
talking about
had-
Travis.
Did you record the sound of his leg breaking?
Oh, well, I recorded this.
Oh, it's so horrible. Hey, Dan, do you think you can make music out of that clip?
No doubt about it.
Oh,
I enjoy a good challenge.
the bone breaking bit that got
That
me.
was like, ugh.
Both visually and auditorily.
So Travis apparently locked off that section, but he didn't do a very good job because that shit came right out of the wall.
Yeah.
And they all fell down
he
that
sent
bottomless
them
pit.
on a fucking Goonies style
Yeah.
sliding adventure. There was somehow simultaneously super silly and really fucking scary.
They
Yeah.
filmed it by like dragging them across the floor for part of it, so it made it look like they were just falling. Like,
is that what you...
For like 100... Yeah, I read. Like,
whoa.
It was supposed to look like they fell 100 feet. But it was like, it was just 15 feet, but then they like pulled them across the floor.
Well,
like that one scene when they're like going like, I think that was obviously like the camera was like this goofy angle. Like they were going across the floor.
Do you remember like the Adam West Batman when him and Robin would be climbing up, like be scaling a building with some like
with their legs all straight out, all like scissoring their legs.
Yeah, they're just like walking and having this conversation. So obviously like the camera turns sideways. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he held
in the Batman movie they do that too.
Oh, did they? Which one?
The one for the show. Like
the 1960s.
That one had bat shark
repellent.
The
bat shark, yeah.
Because he was like, the helicopter was like, he was hanging on a ladder and the helicopter was pulling him up and there's this big great white shark hanging off his leg.
Yeah.
And he used his bat shark repellent, which is a spray. But I was going to say, Travis, he held them up with that broken ass fucking foot. Like he held both of them up. And, that's gotta suck.
For a while.
They were dangling above that pit for a while.
No, they were just dangling.
Yeah,
they were fucking bouncing around.
That was some dedication. That was Starfleet, man. That was some service.
But fortunately, it was a good way to get Travis out of the episode because heaven forbid Travis Mayweather would actually be permitted to do something. He's such an interesting character because almost somewhat unbelievably, like every time they're going on some adventure, he's like, oh yeah, I've done rock climbing. Oh yeah, right. I lived on a cargo ship. Oh yeah, he's got all these skills. So he's led a very interesting life growing up on slow warp trading ships and cargo ships and stuff like that, and getting into all sorts of adventures on all sorts of planets. And yet Enterprise just insisted on not using him at all. And yes, in this episode, they made a mistake and accidentally started using him and then freaked out and injured him so that we could have just Malcolm and Trip continue the journey to go interact with the recalcitrant Denobulans.
That's unfortunate.
Do you think, with that shit he was saying, how you have to take everything out that you bring in, do you think they really needed to do that? Or do you think that was some shit Travis learned in mountain climbing school? Because, like, that sounds like a
Boy Scouts or
that's
hiking,
what I'm saying.
Any sort of hiking.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not on Earth. They're on some other planet. They don't have any, maybe they like having, like, shit left behind in their caves.
Yes, Dan, but you can...
That's some mountain climbing school shit he learned.
But Dan, you can appreciate that maybe a good default position would be if you go someplace to leave it the same as when you...
I mean, you know what they say...
Do you mean the natives like the shit in the cave?
I don't know what they like.
Dan is attempting to justify littering by suggesting that these backward ass aliens...
I didn't say they were backward. You said that. I didn't say. I didn't make a judgment. You're editorializing my comment and making it mine.
I am editorializing your comment.
And you're pushing it onto my face.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's not. Okay. If you like shit, doesn't make you backward.
When you assume,
I agree.
You make an ass out of you and me.
Wait a minute.
So don't assume that a planet doesn't want shit in their caves.
What do you have against mules?
Mules?
Yeah, you're saying like it's a bad thing to be an ass.
That's dumb. What you said was dumb.
I was just joining in. That seemed to be what
I'm going to take my face pistol and shoot you in the ass.
It's funny. How aggressive. That was very
The damage was extensive.
That's early Starfleet.
It was indeed. Waste disposable units. Yes, I did enjoy
duty
that.
Or no duty?
That little bit. I also just...
Waste disposal units.
Yeah, that's definite duty.
I generally enjoyed the fact that this is one of those sort of classic Star Trek episodes where you have an A and a B story, and the A story is wrestling with some sort of extremely heavy, complicated, not easy to resolve ethical or philosophical dilemmas, and then the B story is just a bunch of silly like cave nonsense. We're just running around in a cave, and it's like, remember that Lower Decks episode?
Guys in the cave.
There's that Lower Decks episode called Caves, where they kind of make fun of the whole Star Trek cave thing. We discussed that in episode 211 of IGST, and
check it out.
I think that has one of my favorite second break fun-em-ups, because that's when I went over the cave facts.
Oh, right. Cave
that's
facts.
Right, dude.
I think that might have been like the first time was that the first time you did like some kind of random fun? Was that the first fun-em-up?
It was deep.
It may have been the first fun-em-up. Go check it out. Episode 211 of the It's Got Star Trek podcast. Cave caves.
I thought it was cool when we saw them walking into the cave and all the mountains were in the background, and then you're
was
like,
good.
and then all I think is like, ooh, there's so much. There's 50 kilometers of mapped cave down there, probably even more. It looked. I thought it was like when they showed the graphic at first, I thought it was a spider monster, but it was the cave. But then like knowing that there was all this cave,
There might be spider monsters in the cave.
I'm sure there are. But knowing
better
there's
hope
all
so.
this like spidery cave tunnels down there while they're on the mountain, I'm like, that's awesome. And then imagining them in the cave, I'm like, there's all this nature like outside of. I don't know. It did a good job of comparing those two.
We've said it before, and no doubt we will say it again in the future. But one of the fun things about watching Enterprise, and one of the things that people miss out on if they don't watch Enterprise, if they give it a skip, is that Enterprise represents represents the apex of production design for this era of Star Trek.
The production design went to a different dimension, sort of like went between Voyager and Enterprise.
But it was still in the same sort of thematic vibe, whereas there was a clean break between, say, TOS and the movies, and then TNG, and then there was another clean break between Enterprise and Discovery. So you have the modern era where there's certain sensibilities that are shared across the shows. But that era from TNG to the end of Enterprise, there's sort of a production thematic link, partly because a lot of the same people are working on the show the entire time.
Totally,
right? There were people who the entire time from 1986, 1987 onward were working on the television Star Trek until the end. And specifically what I mean is,
are you talking about how different that Enterprise was from Star Trek in the future from Enterprise?
What are you talking about?
Both?
You're talking
No. I'm talking about how the same it was, but that it's the best version of it. So let me give you an example, and maybe
Right? Are you saying that? Okay, no. I'm
saying.
no,
Let me just.
no,
let me
and
say
I was
one thing really
comparing
quick.
it to afterwards. You're saying it's the last of its kind until Star Trek's after Enterprise.
Precisely.
Yes, right.
I think I was very clear about that.
Well, no, I'm just. I mean, yeah, but the difference was in Enterprise is like the image, the
point I'm
lighting
trying to
was so
make-
different. And
Look, I'm trying to make a point,
dark.
which is it's exactly what you're talking about, which is the scene of them going into the cave with a landed shuttle and all that stuff. They would have done and did do exactly that same type of shot on season 1 TNG, but it, of course, was not as composited as well. Like Enterprise, like everything looks more real. It's widescreen, it's cinematic, but it still looks like it could have been TNG, Deep Space Nine, or whatever. It's just like the better version of it, as opposed to, yes, later on and previous to TNG, there's different eras of style, right? So you do miss out on some of that stuff if you give Enterprise a skip, because even on some of the boring episodes, the production design, generally speaking, is just excellent.
My speleothems.
Yes, in the speleothems, I have that written down. Except I think I spelled it wrong because on my notes there's like a little. There's this. Have you seen this? It's a little red. It's a little red. It's a little red squiggly line, and it shows up under some words.
Yeah,
when you type them in.
Yeah, that's not in the dictionary, is
but
it?
It's not in all of the words.
Travis did come back at the end of the episode only to drop all the speleothems down the pit.
Yeah.
That was a pretty weak.
Well, not all of them.
Oh, not all of them. Which, okay, first of all, that was a pretty weak drop. I thought, like, they just kind of fell out. But like, I thought it was funny how like much of the assholes, the scientists. It's almost like they were pressing buttons because the scientists. Because that was the scene when because they were trying to grab some more of the rocks. That was when T3 went.
If you don't start moving in the next 5 seconds, I'm gonna take my face pistol and shoot you in the ass.
He's like, we've been taking 6 weeks to get these rocks out, and then they got them, and then they went up, and then Travis Mayweather promptly drops a bunch of them on the ground, and they're just like, oh, it's okay, we got more, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's it's hilarious.
Right, so I think they were just trying to piss them off.
That's what I'm saying. It's
point.
funny because we'll talk about the Dr. Phlox stuff in a bit.
Because they were so insistent.
But yeah, there's all this heavy material in this episode, and then there's these goofy ass annoying scientists where I really enjoyed how they structured this story because first of all, Travis is injured. It's clearly a major drop. You have this time constraint. You have xenophobic, racist people on the planet. You got all this stressy stuff going on. And then they encounter the scientists, and the scientists are like, "Nah, we're good. See you later." And then it turns into this whole like comical thing with
they're crawling through these like narrow tunnels, like on their side, on their bellies.
And by the way, spelunking with these ridiculous flashlight things on arms that do not seem practical for spelunking.
And they're not wearing any fucking helmets.
No,
did you see the way they can crawl up the side of the fucking wall?
Well, the Denobulans can, but not fucking read and trip in them.
When the Denobulans climbed up the wall, it gave me that same uncomfortable feeling I got when watching Phlox smile in that one episode where we were like it was all weird.
Or when his face puffs up when he gets scared.
Yeah. Actually, we're talking about how it was aggressive when Trip Tucker was talking about shooting him in the ass. It began actually when they were saying like we're
exactly, yeah.
We're not going to leave because he said my orders are to bring you back. And well, that's not what that. Now I'm gonna. Okay, this is what he says. We didn't risk our lives to hear you say thanks, but no thanks, which is a sound I have that sounds a little something.
Good. I'm looking forward to this.
Like this.
All right.
Thanks, but no thanks.
All right.
Okay, so pack up whatever you need because I swear I'll tie you up and drag you out by your ankles if that's how you want it. See, he's pretty aggressive.
The
He's
thing
got
is,
a mission.
That's what got them to agree to leave.
Right.
Prior to that, they were not willing to agree.
Right,
to leave.
and so that's why he was so willing to threaten them with a phaser because, like, he was like, the only way to talk to these scientists is to threaten them with violence.
Yeah, because they're nerds.
Well, that's what I think is funny is that we have these characters that we should be rooting for, these scientists, for two reasons. One reason because they are scientists, and if you're a Star Trek fan, you're supposed to think scientists are super cool and awesome, and you're supposed to sympathize with them to some degree because you're like, oh, they're a project. But they're also the target of our heroes, Trip and Malcolm in this case, of the mission, right? That to complete their mission, they have to retrieve these people. So that's another reason we want them to go with Trip and Tucker. So it is funny and frustrating when they refuse to go.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
And it's quite.
Yeah. Those Denobulans.
What are you going to do about those Denobulans?
I don't know.
What are you going to do about those Denobulans? What are you going to do about those Denobulans? What are you going to do about those Denobulans? Ghost Shobulans. Do you Denobulans?
Oh, I did mean to ask both of you because I don't know if we've discussed this before, despite talking about caves a lot on Star Trek, because we've been doing this podcast for many years, and this is the 258th episode of the podcast. So as you can guess,
211th birthday.
So as you can guess. By the way,
I don't get it.
I think when we did our 111th episode,
111th is the birthday.
I think Dan goes on a good riff about the 111th birthday. But 111st, whatever.
111st
111st birthday.
Yeah, 111st, but he also goes like 111st. Yeah,
well, we've talked about caves.
Funnier when I
good
do.
old Baggins.
Quite a bit on this podcast because there are lots of caves in Star Trek. But I don't know that we've ever actually gone round robin here.
Round the horn.
And described what our thoughts are.
On caves?
On caves. Look, do you like caves? Jesse, what's your view on caves?
I like caves.
But do you like caving?
I don't think I would like the kind of caving they did where they were like climbing through some narrow passage.
Yeah, I don't think
I like those tunnels that
like
people,
a big cavern.
I like a big old cavern like Luray Caverns or Skyline Caverns. I like those tunnels that they made for the railroads or the canals and stuff.
Yeah,
like
I enjoy that as well. I enjoy
tunnels.
A good canal tunnel.
Yes,
hewn out of the rock.
Yeah, those are nice and spacious.
I like caves too. Although I'm starting to get actually a little freaked out now because I'm thinking about the idea of getting falling headfirst into a tight hole that gets me stuck.
Yeah, that sucks, dude.
And then my arms are trapped.
Yeah.
I'm starting to freak out. I'm getting claustrophobic.
That's happened to a number of people.
I know I'm not generally claustrophobic, but I'm getting claustrophobic thinking about.
Yeah,
that.
I don't like, especially when you see the illustration of where somebody gets wedged in.
I'm not into too much adventure down in the cave. Stay on the path.
Was that a helpful response?
I mean, yeah, no, I was just interested because I've never even just asked you guys in personal life. Although I think I've been in caves with both of you gentlemen.
So
we've been to the tunnels
for one reason or another. Well, for example, in Austria they have those salt mines which are pretty rad to go in, and the ice caves and stuff where it'll be 90 degrees outside and there'll be big, huge icebergs inside the middle of the mountain. That stuff's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I've never been in a salt cave before.
A salt cave.
A salt mine or whatever.
A salt and battery cave. Well, because there's the natural caves, then there's the man-made caves like Jesse was talking about, like the salt mines or the train tunnels.
Salt mines. I want to go to these salt mines.
That's what I was just saying. You can't take my
said it
joke.
first.
No, you did not say it first.
I said it first.
Fuck you. Or
Last cave I was in had handrails.
The Great Pyramids.
Gift shop.
That's
Snack
a man-made, but it's very cave-like because you got to walk all down and then up the stairs, and it's really freaky. Then it opens into this chamber.
It's all tight too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very tight. You have to crouch down. The other one that I was in, I was in the DMZ. And
oh yeah.
Evidently
It was one of the tunnels that the North Koreans, the infiltration tunnels that the North Koreans were digging to the south. But the thing is they have earthquake sensors, so they always know where they're digging, and then they just arrest them when they come up. The other way. But anyway, you can go on a tour on some of those. So.
That's
Anyway,
pretty tight.
that was a cool cave.
Yeah.
But I like the man-made caves. I don't know. I feel more comfortable somehow with a man-made cave because I think the natural caves those are the ones that have beasts and foul creatures and lurking
Snow
lurking
trolls
things.
or ice trolls or whatever trolls.
All manner of trolls.
Perhaps.
Trolls.
Do you know what I think they
They've got,
might have?
What?
Break trolls.
Oh shit.
What an elegant segue.
Yeah.
Because we got to take a break.
An
You get it?
elegant shit way.
Gotta take something.
All right. I think I'll take something when we're on break. So we are about to take a break.
I just made that joke.
No,
You stole my joke.
I said it first.
No, I said it.
When we get back, we will conclude our discussion of The Breach. And this time, I promise, I think we'll talk about Dr. Phlox and his new friend. All right. Jesus Christ. We'll be right back.
I can't hold this much longer.
All right. Are you ready to come back from the break?
Yes.
Okay. I've officially announced it. We are back. Hello.
We are back.
Hello, everyone. We are back.
Eating time?
We are back from the break. We had a good time. Took a little break from the podcast, and now we've returned.
We've returned.
We've returned, and we're going to talk about this guy, Hudak, who's a grumpy little old Gus.
Hudak?
Hudak?
Hudak was Hudak.
Hudak?
Hudak.
Hudak?
Hudak.
Hudak?
Yes.
Keep him away from me.
Hudak, the character's name, I believe his first name in beta canon, it's not on screen, so it's not official. It's not alpha canon, but I believe the beta canon is that this fellow's name is Jason Hudak.
Jason Hudak.
Yeah.
What a dedicated healer you must be.
Okay.
How delightful that we have so much in common.
He's a sarcastic motherfucker.
Well, he was a grumpy Gus.
Yeah.
He was a grumpy Gus. Now, a couple things about this storyline, the Phlox Hudak storyline.
Hudak.
To provide some level of context and explanation for those people who do not actually watch the episode but still listen to the podcast,
Which is weird.
It is a little
Weird, dude.
What are you gonna do? There's weird people out there, and we
I don't get it.
Let's not judge.
You don't get it.
I don't get it.
You don't get it.
I don't get it.
We hang out with weird people. We are.
You don't get
Certainly,
it.
certainly.
I don't get it.
You don't get
I
it.
don't get it.
But this episeur,
Where would I stay?
the main story,
Hologram?
the main ethical question here
Holograms.
is that
I always get that funny.
is that Phlox has a patient. The patient is from a planet that has a bad history with the Denobulans.
We don't know exactly what we know why the Antarans don't like the Denobulans.
Yeah.
We don't know why the Denobulans have issue with the Antarans, but we can kind of guess just like it's the usual.
The implication is that the Denobulans were in the power position, in the aggressor position, because certainly nothing that Phlox says suggests otherwise. But anyway, just for the basic context, Phlox's Denobulan medical ethics, say that he cannot help somebody who does not request it.
But
That's
isn't
the
that-
Denobulan
isn't that
doctor's
but
directive.
isn't that the same here though? Like if you
No,
I mean
it's
no.
different.
no, because you can tell them, you can be like, don't resuscitate me. You can't force them to give you medical aid if you don't want it. You're allowed to say, see you later.
In
and,
certain contexts, but it's sort of very specific and
Doctors
legal.
have to help you.
You know,
doctors have to help, but if you're able to deny
but
aid,
if
you
somebody,
can do that.
Yes, but if somebody was determined
you're
by whatever authority to not be capable of making that decision, for example. Now we didn't examine that in this context.
He seemed
either.
pretty with it. He was able to make that
Exactly.
decision.
He did seem totally with it. But I'm not disagreeing with your point, Dan. I'm just saying that I do think that there's no explicit
and
thing.
he ends up going against his wishes in a way anyways when the guy was wakes up, he's like, what are you doing? He's like, don't worry, I'm just scanning you.
Yeah.
That is a form of medical attention, even though he's only
it's in the spirit of what the guy's talking about. You're right.
Yeah, because it's a read-only operation, but it's interacting with the guy,
it
and the
is.
guy didn't want to associate with Phlox. On top of that, it is still some kind of medical stuff. On top of the fact that he just didn't want to have anything to do with him.
That's the fundamental question here. Is that's what they're setting up. Yeah, they're setting up this idea that this person does the only reason he's dying, but the only reason he's dying at this stage because he has a resolvable problem and a generally easily resolvable problem, but luckily just complicated enough that only Phlox can do it. Otherwise there wouldn't be a problem.
Happy to help, doctor.
If a nurse could do it, or if there are other doctors available who could do it, if it weren't so complicated, then
Happy to help, doctor.
there would be no episode.
Happy to help, doctor. Happy to help. Happy to help. Happy to help. Happy to help. Happy to help.
So in this context,
doctor.
The guys
help, doctor.
The guy's
Happy to help, doctor.
The guy's problem is exactly perfectly titrated such that it is complicated enough that only Phlox can do it.
Yeah.
But it's
right,
not,
that's right.
But it's not so complicated that there isn't basically 100% chance that it's going to work if he lets Phlox do it. Okay.
It's a complex procedure, but I'd say the odds are in his favor.
That's the only scenario that really can make sense in order to examine this in as clean a way as they want to.
I was thinking about that too. It's like he's not the only fucking doctor, but like you said, only Phlox can do it for some reason.
Coincidence that it happened that way.
Yeah.
But good for the drama of the show.
Yeah. You were talking about
he's racist against Phlox, and so he doesn't want Phlox to treat him. It's the equivalent of in Faulty Towers
when the American came and he was like talking about kicking everyone's ass.
No, in Faulty Towers.
Kick your what?
Busting his ass.
Bust your ass. That's right. Bust your ass.
In the episode, the Germans.
I'll bust your ass.
In the episode, the Germans, Sybil Faulty is in the hospital getting an ingrown toenail or operated on. And
that's unfortunate.
Her surgeon happens to be a black man. And when he walks in, Basil Fawlty does a double take. Now, he doesn't prevent the person from treating his wife, but still.
You were talking about how it was implied that the Denobulans were in a position of power, and that is indicated through...
Or at least aggression.
Well, I mean, it's indicated through the writing, too, because... he's talking about how Phlox is talking about how Denobulans are ashamed of their history and they wanted to move on to it. But that even though they feel bad about that, that's a position of privilege that they can be in because they're trying. They're like we just want to move on, and Antarans are like we can't move on.
We bomb the shit out of you.
Yeah, and Archer made a good point. He's like maybe you put it behind you too quickly. There's that point as well. There's still a lot of racist Denobulans all over the place.
His son Mietus.
And
Mietus.
And yes, Metas. And moving on, I don't know. Like of course, the Antarans wouldn't probably accept aid, but there's been no indication that they even tried to give aid or anything like that. So it's just kind of like the Denobulans are ashamed of it, and they think the way to solve it is to just pretend it didn't happen or something. Yeah. And that's their form of moving on. And I think the Antarans probably this is a lot of sort of stuff I'm drawing from the works. But
read a lot into it.
You got to read into it a bit, but which it's logical to me, but if that is the case, and the Antarans have good reason to still be pretty pissed off.
Well, that's why it's a really well-written episode because they do a good job of conveying exactly all of that, the power dynamics, the blame dynamics, the different positions that both Phlox and Hudak have. And
was it downward dog? That's the only position everyone knows in yoga unless they take yoga. Everyone knows about downward dog.
Do you take yoga?
No.
Isn't there some kind of
so that's why I only know downward
dog. Isn't there
there's
tiger
mantis.
lotus or something?
There's also like a sun squatter or something, right?
Yeah, sun squatter. No, that's
sun
one.
squatter.
Hey, Dan. I enjoyed
there's
this
a
game.
mountain roll.
Mountain roll? Okay, keep them coming. I want to hear some more of Dan's yoga. Hey, this could be... And this could be an accidental preview of Dan's special treats.
The reverse rhubarb.
Well, I said yoga, not sexual position.
Oh, rhubarb.
My bad.
Have you ever had rhubarb pie?
It's delicious. It's some of my favorite pie.
It's actually pretty good.
Next to blueberry pie, those are probably my two favorites.
Rhubarb is like a sweet celery.
I love pumpkin pie, rhubarb pie, blueberry pie. Cheesecake is amazing, but I don't know if you'd call that pie, but it is pie, but they don't call it pie. Yeah. I don't know what the deal with that. If you consider cheesecake a pie, that would probably be my favorite pie. The best kind of cheesecake to me is the straightforward cheesecake with nothing really on it, like the shit from the New York Carnegie Deli, that style, where it's like thick and just a hunk of cheesecake, maybe some whipped cream, but I don't need any of that strawberry stuff or anything that. Just like a hunk of hard throbbing, slices.
I like some fruitiness.
Honking
or like
cheesecake.
Some peanut butter or something.
Peanut butter? You want peanut butter on your cheesecake?
Yeah, chocolate.
I imagine that would be tasty, but I prefer it to be pure. Like, I don't like I'm like, I would rather have pumpkin pie separate or cheesecake separate, but the cheesecake pumpkin pie swirl I can do without.
Jesse, you realize I think this is the second time in this episode that Dan has been in favor of segregation.
No. Once with my episode lengths, greater than or less than 40, don't mix those two. And don't mix pumpkin pie and cheesecake. Oh man, you're right.
Well, it wasn't our proudest
the initial
moment,
question
but
about
we've
racism.
done our best to put it behind us.
So this episode shares some similarities to. Do you remember in that episode, that TNG episode, The Enemy, when there's an injured Romulan and his life could be saved by a simple blood or cellular transfusion from Worf, and Worf refuses to give him the transfusion, and the Romulan guy is all like, "I wouldn't want it anyway." Because Klingons are gross.
Wasn't there an episode of Gimme a Break where like the son had with Nell Carter, where the son,
that was a great show.
With the son, he had this like entertainer, this entertainer that like all the kids liked, and it was like he got to meet his hero, his entertainer, and then that guy needed a blood transfusion for some reason, and like for whatever reason, his whatever Nell Carter's relationship was to him, I don't know if she was like, I don't know. Anyway, she took care of it. She was his caretaker or something.
Okay,
and so she was going to give her blood, but then the guy. That's when they found out that his hero, his entertainer hero, was a racist because he didn't want a blood transfusion from Nell Carter because she was black.
I remember that episode.
Right, and at the end of the episode, somehow he gets her blood anyways, and he's all freaked out. And then at the end, it's either the kid or her. They're also like talking about like, and you shouldn't like Goofy either because Goofy's black. And then they leave the room, and the guy was like, "Whoa."
You're talking about Goofy as in the Disney character?
The Disney character Goofy.
Disney character.
Or maybe it was Mickey Mouse. It could have been Mickey Mouse, actually. I'm sorry, it might have been Mickey Mouse, they said.
I'm Mickey Mouse.
But that was another episode where...
I'm black. Do you think Mickey Mouse is coded as black?
I mean...
I don't think so.
I don't think it was a coding issue. I think they were just pointing out that he is the color of...
He is largely a black mouse.
Black and white.
He's unusual because, most mice, when you see them running around the yard or inside your house, heaven forbid, they don't generally have pale faces and dark fur.
Right. Some people like
red pants with big yellow buttons.
Some people insist that rats make wonderful pets. Actually,
we're not talking about rats.
Those people are weird.
We're talking about Mickey Mouse.
Do you remember when those old
Mouse.
Goofy cartoons when he'd fall off the cliff and he'd go whoa?
He always does that. He still does that.
Does he still do that?
He does that for all. And he
That's
also
his
goes.
deal,
He also
dude.
says
That's
gorge.
the greatest. Yeah, gorge.
And then Mickey's all like, ha.
Okay, we're talking about Star Trek, aren't we?
I'm Star Trek Mouse.
Oh, we were talking about segregation, and somehow we got because I was talking about Give Me a Break.
Bad.
Oh, you were talking about that episode, The Enemy. The Enemy.
Yes, The Enemy, which is at least a Star Trek episode, even though it's not this Star Trek episode, but it does have that thematic connection. It's a different setup because in that case, Worf doesn't want to give the guy the blood. And Picard is kind of like, I could order you to do it. And Worf is like, yeah, if you order me to do it, but I don't want to do it.
Yeah, and that episode ended fucked up too.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But we haven't talked about that episode on this podcast. Maybe we'll do that one of these days. Maybe if we keep saying the TNG episode, The Enemy, your podcast selection algorithm will be influenced to select it.
Mm-hmm, maybe.
And then we'll watch it.
Well, no, it can't be the title because it doesn't go by that. I always have to clarify that the title does not influence the episode at all unless they say the title in the episode.
Yeah.
Because it does not take title into account.
Yeah. And I don't believe they say the enemy in The Enemy.
Yeah.
They may, but I don't recall them saying.
Who are they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Phlox actually when Archer's all like,
all I'm asking is that you try.
It seemed like Phlox was affected by the racism of his grandmother. Yeah. Like he had a little bit of it in him, and he was even admitting to it that he's like, I'm trying to be good, But at first he didn't want to work on the guy because of his his oath he takes, which is not the Hippocratic
business ethics.
Business ethics.
Doctor's direction.
Hippocrates wasn't a Denobulan.
But he didn't even want to talk to the guy at first, and that's when Archer was yelling at him, be like, dude, just fucking talk to him, because it seemed like he didn't want to have anything to do with it.
That's an order.
So he might just not wanted the confrontation, but then also there was that point when he freaked out at the guy, and he was like talking about like, you're the problem.
It was I was being a shit.
Well,
man.
it's the classic, it was the classic situation where someone's like, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, when in actuality, it takes two to tango or whatever.
Yeah.
And
it takes two to pass adobe.
I knew you were gonna make a joke on that. I knew it.
Did you know I was gonna say paso doble?
No, but it didn't matter.
He was going to say minuets.
You understood the form.
Yes.
Good.
So when So his response when he freaked out at that guy,
Takes a couple to corrupt.
when he freaked out at that guy, that was a little bit of his grandma's sort of racism. And like I said, when you get so pissed when you say it's not my fault, it's your fault, like that's sort of ignoring the that both people are playing over this. I think this was the only time Phlox actually got really pissed off about anything.
It was kind of interesting because when you look at the Memory Alpha and some other sources on the background of this episode,
more like Memory Alpha.
What is that?
John Billingsley thought this was a good episode overall, and that there were specific parts of it that were particularly good. But he had some trouble with sort of the idea
that Phlox was getting all fucked
and some of the lines. He was like Phlox was designed to be this sort of Zen character, this laid back, chill, almost like stoner kind of hippie character, and so it was he thought it was a little too jarring.
Yeah, it was weird
that Phlox that the Denobulans in general would have this history of like genocide or some attempted whatever, like
something bad.
They killed 20 million people, I think, right?
Yeah, it was 20 million people.
It's like a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's
and that he had these scenes that he said he enjoyed acting and he thought they were powerful scenes, but that they were he thought they were a little out of character for Phlox, specifically for the reasons you're talking about.
I mean, when he said,
I'm going to take my face pistol and shoot you in the ass.
I thought that was a little much for his character.
Not necessarily.
Surprisingly, I don't have that sound clip.
Yeah, why don't you have that sound clip? It was just because it's so we did that a bit. Was that in the pilot?
What's a pilot?
I just can't help it. Jesse, what are you clicking over there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
that was
him.
me. I was assuming.
For the first time, that was Dan was clicking.
I was
blaming Jesse for Dan's stuff.
I was fucking with the rubber band. I'm sorry. This was my bad.
Okay, it's a rubber band.
Our situation is critical.
Dan was fiddling with an unloaded rubber band gun, and Dan has not been formally trained in the use of firearms as Jesse and I have, and he was dry firing that guy. You should never dry fire a gun. It's not good for the mechanism.
Dry fire.
Yeah.
Dry fire.
Dry fire.
Crossfire.
You'll get caught up in the
crossfire. But you're speaking about his son Metis. They hadn't talked. This is another age thing. He said we haven't spoken in 10 years, which in their time is like 3 to 4 years.
Could be. Yeah.
It's like up there, it's their time, but down here, it's our time. It's another. I'm making a Goonies reference because they did the Goonies slide, so I'm making a Goonies reference.
Yeah.
About dreams. You see, this was my wish, and it didn't come true. So I'm
going to take my face pistol and shoot you in the ass.
I'm taking it back. I'm taking them all back.
I think it's interesting how Phlox and T'Pol are like good buds, because T'Pol is like emotionless, logical Vulcan, whatever you want to argue on that point, but that's what she's sort of presented as. And Phlox, while he's not full
oh no. Dude.
Phlox, while he's not full of emotion, he's very expressive.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
And so they make an interesting pair because, like, ultimately they're both like similar and logical. You know, they're both like, they're not taken over by their emotions. They're logical. They know how to look at something reasonably.
They're the science officers.
But when you look at how they behave, like it appears like I said, he's expressive and she's not, but they're actually very similar characters. So it's that fun thing where they're like,
it's a little fun. It's fun.
Where how they present themselves complement each other, but they have good. It's just an interesting dynamic that I think works well. I think there should have been some kind of buddy comedy with Phlox and T'Pol.
It's like
Voyager
with
buddy
like
something.
7 of 9
buddy
and
episode.
Tuvok.
7 of 9 and Tuvok?
Yeah.
Well, because they're both like, I am a thing that walks around and does this stuff. and T'Pol's all like, there's been extensive damage, and then Phlox is like, well,
we don't need a Phlox and T'Pol show. We need a Dan show. Dan's special treats, where he says things like, I'm just a thing.
That's just the thing.
They should have a Phlox and T'Pol buddy episode.
Well, they don't do much.
But they never did anything like that. They would just occasionally eat together.
No.
If you don't start moving in the next 5 seconds, I'm going to take my face pistol and shoot you in the ass.
They didn't have.
Doesn't that seem odd to you?
They didn't have an episode, but they frequently did pair them up and do things like there was Phlox doing some dentistry stuff on T'Pol at
That's
one point.
what I'm saying, though.
That was good.
That's what I'm saying.
But you want like a whole episode.
I want a whole episode.
I bet there's look in the books. I bet there's a book or a comic book, and if not, You should write one. You should write a short story.
That's called fan fiction, and I'm not going to be a part of that.
Why you said
Be
that
a part of it, motherfucker.
No, I have nothing.
disdainfully?
I have nothing against fan fiction. Some fan fiction actually turns into episodes. I just know that if I wrote it, it would turn out to be that cringy shit you read, like
Why don't
that
you
where the
have-
person's trying to be all like cool and good, but it's like, ugh.
Why don't you have ChatGPT write it for you?
Oh,
Why don't you have
God.
ChatGPT write you
No, because I don't want a
100-page
because I'm not going to let
story
I'm
about
not, I don't want.
DePaul
You
and,
could
and
smell
Phlox?
your
I don't want
farts from the
AI
morning to
to.
the
I don't
dark.
want AI to replace my ability to think. I'd rather like.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No, I don't think it is either. But the point is like it's easy to defer thought to like, oh, let's just have ChatGPT do it, and it's like it's
Yeah.
kind of a cop out.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I won't deny that.
unless you're making a specific point to address ChatGPT.
I won't deny that it's easy, and I won't deny that it's a cop-out. But it could also be funny.
There have been some funny songs on YouTube with ChatGPT, but at this point, like any new
Songs on YouTube.
like there's one about like
ChatGPT.
there's one where there's one where this guy's talking about I had my nuts taped to my ass or something like that.
I know the ones
Yeah.
you're talking about where,
And
where it's like sounds like some like old blues or something. Or
yeah,
some, like,
that was pretty funny, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I don't know. It's got to be really good for me because like just I don't want. I like if I'm either I'm gonna write the fan fiction or I'm not. I'm not gonna get ChatGPT to do it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad we resolved that.
I might do it to read it to see how well it did, and then see if I could get a subscription to GPT-4 and compare and contrast their stories. That would be interesting.
Well, and don't limit yourself to ChatGPT. There's also
Gemini.
and there's Meta AI,
And there's Marvel
and there's Bliblarps.
and Zoopy Doops.
Yeah, in fact, there's It's Got Star Trek.ai, which is
Give me something for the pain.
it's an AI that we're going to train
Give me
only.
something.
We're training it only with our episodes of It's Got Star Trek.
That's a lot of shit.
Did you think Hudoc was convinced was convinced rather quickly?
Well, as we
the
said,
end?
earlier, Enterprise episodes were much shorter to allow for more commercials as compared to TOS.
I mean, I didn't
So,
mean 3
yes.
minutes more quickly. I meant like
it's like 3 minutes more quickly.
like yeah. I'm saying like there was a lot of hatred that just got resolved in that one moment.
It was. Quick.
Okay, I can almost if I was gonna buy that Hudoc forgave all of Denobula that one thing.
All of
I would have
Denobula.
a hard time believing that he would then bring a Denobulan on their ship with the rest of the crew.
No. Well, you got to remember.
What do I have to remember, Patrick?
Or you
what
might
do
have
I
to realize.
to?
I
have to.
He was
Because
the.
I don't. That's assuming I don't.
He was the only.
You're assuming I don't.
He was the only
How do you know I don't?
Antaran on that ship. So it was a ship full of all manner of people.
There were weird faces.
There were all sorts of, as Jesse pointed out, there were all sorts of.
Then why did they
weird
ask him
faces.
if it was going to be okay to put him on the ship if he was the only Antaran? We already know he was okay with them. Archer was like, "Is that going to be okay?"
No, we didn't know that he was okay with them. We knew that he let.
We didn't know if those other guys were okay.
Yeah,
with
he
it.
let Phlox, who he had interacted with a lot and could save his life, perform a simple or complex procedure to save
He
his
says,
life.
"I understand they'll be heading home on your transport. I
Yes,
hope
your
that
transport,
I
the
know. He said,
transport
"I'm
you're
done. Let me
riding."
finish the sentence.
No.
Let me fucking finish."
No, I won't.
See, when you try to guess where my point is going, sometimes
guessing.
you're wrong, and then we have to go through this rigmarole.
All right.
He says, "I understand they'll be heading home on your transport. I hope that won't be a problem." Yes, your transport. I understand that. But we've already established that Hudoc had forgiven Denobula, so why even bother asking him that question if he's the only Antaran?
Because
We don't know that he's the only Antaran. There might be more.
First of all, the implication is that he's the only Antaran.
How is that the implication?
Because he's the only one who we've interacted with, and why would maybe Archer, if there were others, he went and asked them permission too, but they would have said no, presumably, because they didn't go through this transformative
That's why
process.
I'm saying it didn't make sense that
So
they.
we can.
See, you're
assume
saying
this. I disagree with your point.
You're saying you disagree because it wouldn't make sense for there to be other Antarans that would like put up with that shit. And I'm saying the same thing, except I'm saying that is what they implied, and that's weird that they would imply that.
I'm saying that I find it confusing that you don't understand that it would.
I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Yes, that you don't understand.
You're asserting that what you're saying is
haven't let me-
demonstrably correct.
You haven't let me complete my point, or what I think you don't understand, which is, or maybe are not appreciating that Archer was being polite to this person who had made explicitly clear that he wanted nothing to do with these people and reluctantly, under the risk of death, resolved his relationship with a very specific Denobulan. I disagree with you that he's made any indication that he's forgiven all of Denobulia, because even at the end of this, he said, I wish there were more Denobulans like you, and which was sort of aggravating, because then Phlox has to be like, yeah, I've been telling you there are.
Okay, well, whatever you say about all of Denobula, that doesn't affect my point about the transfer. You did say
the whole
Archer.
Denobula.
You said
no.
You said wait, but you said your point about what I was saying was that Archer was just being polite, and that's a big if right there. That's a big buddy if. That's a big butter butt.
Big
if.
buddy.
I think he's being polite to both him and
that's an assumption.
and to the Denobulans.
You're saying the thing that I don't understand. You're saying, Dan, the thing you don't understand is he is being polite, and that's so fucking loaded with assumptions. That's horseshit. I don't understand something that you're asserting is correct because you say so. The thing that you don't understand is that I'm saying something, and because I'm saying it, it's true. That's what you don't understand. That's what you said.
Yeah, pretty much. Good. All right. I'm glad we agree. So
I'm going to take my face pistol and shoot you in the ass. Better late than never.
If it was set on stun, that might,
Bashir didn't set it on stun when he shot Mirror Moto.
Yeah, last week we discussed crossover.
We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help.
And that is rhythmic.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help. We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help.
It almost sounds the sound quality is so good on that one quote. It almost sounds like it's out of a commercial or something.
Well,
is that better or this?
I thought I made myself clear.
Well, see, that is just that's less rhythmic and more sexy.
Yeah.
Whereas the samples
Captain Archer, I thought I made myself clear.
We have a lot of samples. We'll need your help.
That's just more musical.
I wasn't looking forward to throwing you in irons.
We have a lot of samples, but we do not have a lot of time left in this episode.
Do you think Archer was joking when he talked about putting Phlox in irons? Or do you think he was serious?
Literal irons, or was he being metaphorical?
Well, I mean, do you think he would have thrown him in the brig if Phlox hadn't followed through?
I mean, one wouldn't think, but then again, while watching this episode, I was reminded about the fact that Archer has both a propensity and a facility at threatening people into doing what he asks them to do. Yeah. Because he asks politely a lot, and then he threatens people, and then they do it.
Oh, dude!
Like at the end when
that was actually kind of badass when he called him out on that, and was just like, it's like
you're your hands full.
Yeah. He's like, you're gonna go to war with us. We're gonna go to war with you, and you already got someone else attacking you, so you're fucked.
Yeah.
That was badass. That was an awesome. I thought that was pretty tight.
So he, and we've seen him torture people in season 3.
Right? Yeah. Just think about that.
That was like, it's funny when you get.
Sorry.
We got some. Usually the comments on social media are generally positive with regard to our podcast. Occasionally they complain about us being too hilarious or something along those lines.
Oh,
but
small thinkers.
But that was an episode in Carpenter Street when Archer's just like punching the shit out of somebody.
I'm going
we sort of like we're saying like that's not a very like Star Trek thing to sort of tie somebody to a chair and torture them. But we got a lot of comments saying like, no, that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do given the nature of the situation. And it's like every single one of those comments was by a man. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna infer anything from that, but
I think it's time to go to Carpenter Street.
Well, it is almost time to go from the episode. So what else do we need to talk about?
There wasn't a that's an order, but there was a moment when Archer said, "I'm giving you an order," and to me that was A-okay.
I agree with you. Yes,
I was like, how else are you gonna say it?
It was not a cliched that's an order.
Right.
It was fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what to do, and I'm the captain.
Fuck you, telling you what to do on Carpenter Street. Also, some lore about Xantoros. It has unusual speleothems. It also has calcite, aragonite, botyroidal, and botyroidal flowstone.
Yeah, which sounded pretty hot.
Yeah, like hot as in like sexy.
Yeah, flowstone.
Flowstone. Flowstone. I like my flowstone.
That makes me think of Flossed in Paradise in The Fifth Element.
Flossing Paradise?
No,
I want to go to a
flossing
flossing paradise.
No, you don't. It'll just be chunks of grossness everywhere. Like if everyone's flossing, that's not cool because then there's just chunks of tooth junk flying out everywhere.
And if everyone flosses, it's like nobody's flossing, right? That whole relativity thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what relatively means.
I like the effect of both ships zipping away at FTL at the end.
Yeah.
You see, and there was a cool. I like
to the audience, FTL is shorthand for faster than light.
The year 2000 faster than light sort of effect. I thought it looked neat. It looked like all computery in a way that I liked. Yeah. Not computery in the Babylon 5. I never got into Babylon 5. I'm gonna try to watch that again because I just remember being so put off by the special effects.
I was, speaking of which,
because I heard it was good.
I recently ran into our good old buddy David Traub, who has been on this podcast before, and I proposed to him that we do an It's Not Star Trek where we cover the pilot episode of Babylon 5. Right. He first of all, he agreed to, and he also laughed because he said that's like the worst episode in the whole series. But
which
anyway,
episode?
The pilot, the original first episode. Anyway, that's for the future.
That's a very good challenge.
The 2 points I wanted to make is I thought the xenomythology sounds like an awesome thing. So Hudak's job is like a xenomythologist.
And you'd think someone who is a xenomythologist would have a little more tolerance towards the culture.
But we can see examples of this in anthropology and sociology. Not always the case. People do not always have the attitudes that you might assume, or by that measure, Star Trek fans, right? We see it all the time online. Star Trek fans.
All I'm asking is that you try.
Some Star Trek fans hold views that seem confusing given the general tenor and ethos put forward by the Star Trek franchise.
Our situation is critical.
The other point, or the last point I wanted to make, is I really thought there was some sort of meta meaning to, I think it was a Trip who said, "Sorry, Travis, you aren't going anywhere." Because as we discussed, they were like, let's sideline Travis as soon as we can.
Yeah.
And then Travis is all like, give me something for the pain and we'll keep going. And Trip is just like, sorry, Travis, you aren't going anywhere.
Sorry, Travis. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah. That's a good point. I never thought about that. I bet you somebody snuck that in.
That's why we do this podcast every week.
We think of things.
And we talk to each other.
Think of things.
And we get little insights. All right.
He'll be a bit groggy when he comes out of the anesthesia.
Last chance because we got to close things down.
Close them out.
We're done.
2, 1, 3. 2, 1, 3. 1, 2, 1, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 3. 2, 1.
What kind of count is that?
Could you hear like the rope all tensing like throughout the whole thing? Yeah. I can't even make that. How does a human even make that? I bet. What's his name?
This is Foley work.
Who's that guy who goes the bleeps, the creeps? What's
the
bleeps,
that guy? The creeps, and the sweeps?
What's that guy's name?
Michael Winslow.
Yeah, I bet he could make a good. Yeah, the bleeps.
Wait, hold on. Okay, we're funny guys. That was a pretty good episode.
The bleeps.
Pretty good episode of Enterprise.
The creeps.
And a pretty good episode of this podcast. Maybe not the best, but a pretty good one.
Hey, I thought we did okay tonight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think we did okay. I think we did a good solid job. That's right.
Holograms?
That's the one you always say.
So next week, how do you find out what we're going to discuss next week?
You're not.
No, you are. So first of all, we'll probably have it in the show notes. So we'll probably know by then. Because again, for the uninitiated, Dan has
waste disposal units.
Has a bespoke podcast topic selection algorithm. Jesse and I do not know how it works, but it slurps up our previous week's episode, spits out the next episode we should discuss.
Toss a coin?
That is to say, toss a coin to your Witcher. That is to say, when we're not covering new episodes, which we will be soon because Lower Decks is coming back soon for the 5th and final season. So we'll be covering it each week. But until then, we'll have Dan's podcast topic selection algorithm pick for us. It'll be in the show notes probably, but it'll also be on our website and our social media, which is at It's Got Star Trek.
Show notes. Twitter,
Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, all that business, Facebook, YouTube, D's nuts, and all that jazz. Patreon.com/It's Got Star Trek. Feedback at It's Got Star Trek. That's another thing you can interact with us on with the email.
I did have nightmares.
Old-fashioned email. I think that does it. So with that, we'll say...
what a dedicated healer you must be, practicing your bedside manner. How delightful that we have so much in common.
We'll
sarcastic asshole.
A hearty...
Don't do it, Jesse.
Goodbye.
Don't do what?
You had the thing up to your nose like you're going to...
Thanks for your company.
All right, bye-bye.
Good night.
We take out everything we bring in.
Poops, and sex. Poop, sex. Bye-bye.
My speleothems.
Forget about him.
Fortunately, I have some other samples in my case.